kids here today? Well, welcome. My name is Mrs. Ausler. It's kind of like you're walking around and you hurt your toe. You go, ow, ow, Ausler. That's my name, Mrs. Ausler. Okay, so that's what my name is in case some of you forgot. And now you know I'm Mrs. Ausler. Okay? All right, welcome. So we are talking about Daniel. And Daniel was what's called a major prophet. A prophet is someone that God spoke to back in the Old Testament. That means it was before Jesus was born. And God told these prophets what was going to happen. The prophets were given knowledge from God directly. And God just didn't tell the prophets so they knew. He told the prophets, hear my message and tell the people around you. So prophets weren't always so well liked because they told people when they were sinning. That means they were doing something wrong, and people don't like to know when they're doing something wrong. Okay? So Daniel was a prophet, and our story today is Daniel in the lion's den. How many of you, raise your hand, have heard the story before about Daniel in the lion's den? I love this line. Isn't he awesome? All right. So, you may know the story, but we're going to teach you some other things about it that might be new for you today. Our Bible point for today, that means our main idea, is that God won't let us down. And in our story today, God did not let Daniel down because he closed the mouths of the lions, which we're going to find out in a few moments. But first, we're going to see what it's like to have your mouth closed. So I'm going to tell you something fun I did this summer. I'm going to share with you something I did, and then afterwards you're going to share with someone sitting near you something you did. But here's the catch. You have to tell them, with your mouth closed. So I'm going to give you an example. Try to figure out what I'm saying. Only one sentence. Raise your hand if you think you know what I said. What do you think I said? Good guess, but no. One more time. Anyone else take a guess?
I only know the first word.
It does start with the word I.
Yeah, I knew that.
I went camping with my mom and dad and my husband. Now listen.
Oh.
Can you hear it now? Okay, so I want you to practice talking with your mouth closed. So I want you to think in your head right now, real fast, just one thing you did this summer. One thing, one sentence, and then you're going to tell someone either sitting near you or an adult near you, but you have to tell them with your mouth shut. Okay, and after one person goes first, then take turns and someone else goes. Okay, so I'm going to give you about 1 minute at the most. Go ahead, take turns. And you can tell me. You have to stand and run though because I'm going to ask you right now. So go ahead. Remember, ready? I went, no, it's not, doesn't it with I? Okay, I have no clue. Tell me what it was. Oh, say it again, say it again.
How come you didn't find it?
Let me hear it go louder. I can hear it now, yes, cool. All right, switch partners if you haven't done so.
I want you.
All right, let me have your eyes back up here now and your mouth still closed. Now, with our mouths closed, it was pretty hard to talk, wasn't it? And it's also impossible for a lion to bite you if his mouth or her mouth is closed. But in this story today, God closed the mouth of the lions because he showed that he will not let us down. So in our story today, we're going to hear about Daniel. Now, Daniel loved talking to God. He was a very faithful man. He obeyed God. He listened to God. And he did what God told him to do. But then other people tried to stop him from talking to God. When we talk with God, we're often in prayer. And when this happened, God did not let Daniel down. Now you'll see that Daniel was well respected back when. He was a high-ranking official. That means he was very important. He was in charge of a lot of things. And he had proven to the king that he was very responsible and capable. So the king was about to even raise him up to a higher position. Well, that made the other people very jealous. If you look at those men behind that pillar, don't they look angry? Because they're not happy that Daniel's doing so well. They're jealous of him. And we're going to find out what happened next. In the book of Daniel, we're all in chapter 6 today. I'm going to have you hold on to your question to the end, sweetie, okay? Is it an emergency? Okay, then you're going to have to wait, okay? Thank you. All right, verses 4 through 5. And then when you see the red, that means it was word for word in the Bible, and this is the NIRV Bible. But the other two leaders and the royal rulers, they heard about it. So they looked for a reason to bring charges against Daniel. They tried to find something wrong with the way he ran the government. That means the people. But they weren't able to. They couldn't find any fault. That means they couldn't find anything wrong with his work. He could always be trusted. He never did anything wrong. He always did what he was supposed to. Finally, these men said, "We want to bring charges against Daniel, but it's almost impossible for us to come up with a reason to do it. If we find a reason, it will have to be in connection with the law of his God." So the two leaders and the royal rulers went as a group to the king, and they said, "King Darius, may you live forever." All the royal leaders, high officials, royal rulers, advisors, and governors want to make a suggestion. They have a nasty reason for this. "We've agreed that you should give an order. You should make sure that it's obeyed." That means that it's followed. "Your Majesty, here is the command. You should make your people obey for the next 30 days. Don't let any of your people pray to any god or human being except for you." Notice in that picture, they're bowing down and they're worshiping King Darius. If they do, throw them into the lion's den. Now give the order, write it down into the law of the Medes and Persians, then it can't be changed. So King Darius put the order in writing. Now he didn't realize what they were up to. He just thought, yeah, I guess it'd be good to have people just worship me and praising me and me alone. He didn't realize what the other people were doing, which was trying to get Daniel in trouble. Now here in our country, we don't have a king, we have a president. So in your head, I want you to think in a moment, if the president made a law that told you you cannot pray anymore, I want you to think, what would you do? So a law means you have to obey it, and if you don't obey it, you get in trouble. And then the hand with the praying hands and the slash means you're not allowed to pray. So I want you to just take a moment and think in your head, if the president said you cannot pray to God or Jesus anymore, what would you do? Take a moment and think. Okay, now let's find out what Daniel did when he heard about this law to only obey King Darius. Maybe he did the same thing that you are thinking in your head. Maybe he did something different. We'll find out. Going on in verse 10, Daniel found out that the king had signed the order. In spite of that, he did just as he always had done before. He went home to his upstairs room. Its windows open toward Jerusalem. He went to his room 3 times a day to pray. He got down on his knees and gave thanks to his God. So he's doing it where other people could see him. He wasn't praying in secret. In verse 11, some of the other royal officials went where Daniel was staying. and they saw him praying and asking God for help. Now, what do you think they're thinking? Aha! I see Daniel praying. What do you think they might do?
Put him in.
Molly, what do you think? Go tell the king. How many of you agree with Molly? They're going to go rat on him and tell the king. All right, let's find out. The royal officials reported to the king that they had seen Daniel praying to God. And they said that he must be thrown into the, allowed what? Lion. And now can you hear a roar? Now, the king really liked Daniel. And he didn't want to throw him into the dangerous lion's den. The king tried to find a way to stop Daniel from being thrown in. But he had already signed that law, and there wasn't anything he could do because he couldn't take it back. So here's what happened. So the king gave the order. Daniel was brought out and thrown into the lion's den. Now, every time you say lion's den, you're going to follow with the roar. Ready? He was thrown into the lion's den. The king said to him, "You always serve your God faithfully, so may he save you." So even though the king didn't want to throw him in the lion's den, he was really hoping that Daniel's God would save him. In verse 17, a stone was brought and placed over the opening of the den. The king sealed it, that means he shut it, with his special ring. He pressed a little symbol on there. He also sealed it with the rings of his nobles. Then nothing could be done to help Daniel. Now think for a moment. I would have been terrified being thrown in the lion's den. But Daniel was different. Daniel trusted that God wouldn't let him down. Now if you look in there, there's the lions all around him. And God's trusting him in this very scary situation, which is really hard for us to do. Now, if someone was going to throw you into a pit, think about what would be the scariest thing in that pit for you. And what would you do? Maybe it's lions. Maybe it's spiders.
Or sharks.
I don't like sharks too much, even though they'd have to be like in a water-filled pit. Scorpions. I don't know. What are some other scary things? Snakes? What? Just the dark. So think in your mind, what would be that scariest thing in that pit that you'd have to face? Because we might have something different, but it's whatever your worst fear is. Now, Daniel didn't have to face spiders or anything like that, or snakes, which would be scary, but he had to face lions. And not this big, plushy, just love him, stuffed animal. Thank you, Amazon. But ferocious tigers and lions. Lions that could tear him apart, gobble him up, and eat him.
That was just the
So, what, honey? No, we're not going to real one. All right, so let's find out what happened in 19 through 20. As soon as the sun began to rise, the king got up. He hurried to the lion's den. When he got near it, he called out to Daniel. His voice was filled with great concern, and he said, "Daniel, you serve the living God. You always serve him faithfully. So has he been able to save you from the lions?"
No.
Raise your hands if you think God saved him from the lions. Daniel answered, "Your Majesty, may you live forever. My God sent his angel, and the angel shut the mouth of the lion." Yes. "They haven't hurt me at all. That's because I haven't done anything wrong in God's sight. I've never done anything wrong to you either, Your Majesty." The king was filled with joy. He ordered his servant Daniel to be lifted out of the den. So they did. And they didn't see any wounds on him. So he didn't even have a scratch on him. That's because he trusted in his God. So Daniel had success while Darius was king. And things went well with Daniel during the rule of Cyrus the Persian. Now let's look at this next slide. The first question is, what would have happened if Daniel had prayed in hiding? In other words, he still prayed, But when he prayed, he did it where no one could see him. He did it in hiding. What do you think would have, how would the story have changed if Daniel had prayed in hiding? What do you think? Anyone?
He wouldn't even be.
Yes, dear.
He wouldn't get in trouble.
So he wouldn't get in trouble, right. And if he didn't get in trouble, he never would have been thrown into the... And if he never got thrown in the lion's den, he never would have had to trust in God to have God's angels close the mouths of the lions. And then King Darius wouldn't have realized that Daniel's God was so powerful and saved him, right? So let's take a look. If he had prayed in hiding, no one would have gotten to see God's power over the lions. But because Daniel was faithful, he was able to show what God could do for him. And because he didn't pray while he was hiding, everyone got to see that God won't let us down, which is our main idea for today. God won't let us down. Say it with me. God won't let us down. And they saw what happened to Daniel. In fact, the king made a new law. Listen to this. In verses 26 through 27, here's the king speaking. I order people in every part of the kingdom to respect and honor Daniel's God. He is the living God. He will live forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His rule will never end. He sets people free and saves them. He does miraculous signs and wonders. He does them in the heavens and on the earth. He has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So we can be brave just like Daniel because we know that God won't let us down. Now sometimes people might let us down. They disappoint us, they hurt our feelings sometimes because we're flawed, we're full of sin, we make mistakes. But God, He's different than people. He's perfect. God will never let us down. Miss Victoria, could you go back to the slide earlier in the show that says the bottom line? It might be like the second slide, God won't let us down. Thank you. So what we're going to do, kiddos, is you're going to, in your groups, you're going to make a little craft, and you're going to write the words, God won't